Welcome back to Outnumbered, developing now on the Hill. Democrats want $60 million of your tax dollars to study gun violence, saying it's time we study the issue like the public health crisis that it is. The NRA is calling the proposed study nothing but, quote, junk science designed to further the Dems' political agenda. So first off, we should note that President Obama ordered a similar study last year from the CDC. The CDC produced that study. It didn't get a lot of attention. Why? Because the study showed that more gun laws actually don't reduce crime. Came from the CDC. Media ignored it because it didn't fall in line with their agenda. Second, we need to point out that homicides have been cut in half since 1992. Crime is down. Mass shootings have also gone down in the past decade. So why are we going to spend, Sandra, $60 million studying the same thing that we studied last year when we're seeing the results of gun crime going down already?
Well, because there was a 17-year ban on these studies, right, Katie? And if they can find any way to fit this into their political agenda this time, then they'll certainly use it. And also, by the way, adding to your statistics, if you look at the cities in the United States that have the most gun laws, Chicago, for example, they have the highest rates of gun violence. But, Katie, this all goes back to the point that guns don't kill people. People kill people. So to go and pay $60 million, but you say that, but what is driving those people to kill? That's what should be being studied.
Drugs.
Those guns don't pick themselves up themselves, Kirsten.
It's interesting because drugs actually, I think, would fall better under the CDC guidelines for what it ought to be researching. I mean, I could see that.
That's why Chicago has a high crime rate, because you get two drug gangs fighting over turf, and that's why you have so many dead people.
But my point was more, who would you rather run into? A person who's mentally unstable holding a knife, or a person who's mentally unstable holding a gun? I think, neither would be our choice.
You're standing to them, because they can do a lot of damage with a knife.
Do you want the guy with the? If these are your only choices, do you want them walking into a school with a knife or a gun? Come on, Sandra, you have a child.
I'll give you a recent example.
Answer.
A guy walked into a school not long ago and managed to stab a young kid. Managed to stab 20 people.
That's not what I'm talking about, though. I'm talking about how many people died.
But it is what you're talking about.
No, I'm talking about mass murder in a second.
But here's the issue.
That's what I'm talking about.
Here's the issue. If someone walked in this room with either a knife or a gun and we have nothing, what are we supposed to be doing? I mean, would you rather have something to defend yourself? So the point is, the CDC going, back to the study, is going to study something they've just recently studied to try and push this political agenda that we need more gun laws to combat gun violence, when we've seen from the government's own reports that more gun laws from the CDC don't reduce that.
If these studies are so bogus, why is the NRA going out of just so much trouble to try to stop them?
You
referenced the ban.
But what do you mean bogus? She just cited the last study that was done, that they didn't bring anything up because they didn't even have any proof that.
No, but that's not my question, Sandra. My question is, why was there a 17-year ban on the studies? That was because the NRA
controls most of the legislation that goes through the House. So why are they banning studies
on gun violence if there's nothing to see here?
For the NRA to say this is junk science, first of all, the NRA is junk to begin with.
Why?
Why? Because they are. If it were up to these guys, you could have a bazooka in your backyard. I mean,
that's not true.
Yes, it is true. And fighting for rights of what?
To own a gun.
To gun down school children.
We could argue about that for a long time. Let's assume, I'm not against people owning guns.
The proper use of a gun, Kirsten.
The idea of carrying guns, the NRA wants everybody to carry guns, and wherever you want, in bars, in churches, wherever you want to do that. Okay. That's their idea of
Let's get back to the issue of the study, which is they want to treat gun ownership and gun violence as a public health problem.
Right. It is.
That is not appropriate, considering 99% of gun owners don't use their guns inappropriately. It's not a health issue. It's an issue of crime and criminology. And so for the government to, somehow act like using a firearm correctly, or that they need to study this issue as if there's a health problem there, I think it's a very slippery slope.
They've chosen the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to look at this. It's also interesting, as we've all been pointing out, that the studies haven't turned up anything new with regard to how dangerous a gun might be versus how dangerous a person carrying any other kind of weapon would be. But the other point is, after that ban,
who's more dangerous.
The point of the study, Kirsten, is to enact more gun laws. That the gun laws do not cure the problem. In fact, they make it worse. As I just pointed out, in the city of Chicago, if somebody's going to use a gun to commit violence, they're going to get a hold of that gun and they're going to commit that violence. So the gun laws that they're implementing only strip us of our rights.
So by lifting this ban at the time, and this is where it kind of gets back to the politics of the issue with you and Bob, Kirsten, the big question is, Why now? Why did he do this now? And is it really to fit into a narrative that the Democrats really want?
Well, first of all,
even if it doesn't fit based
Democrats
on what
actually
the
care about.
Yeah, I understand that.
Are they going to try to wedge it? Do it again. Do it again.
I
until you find what
defy
we need.
Katie's arguments here. That one of the reasons gun violence is down is that most people have been locked up. Number one. Number
No,
two,
that's not
the
true.
number of
Wow.
mass shootings have increased, not decreased. But leaving that aside,
That's not true
This
either.
is
That's not true.
the National Rifle Association wants to control the narrative on guns. They always have. There are 1,600 kids who were
Bob,
killed.
it sounds like the Democrats want to control
Well,
the narrative
as
right
much
now
as we
because they've
possibly
gotten
can.
feedback on studies
As
that
much as
said
we
that
possibly can.
Let him finish. Like, let's get.
Listen, 1,600 kids were killed last year in their homes because nobody locked their guns up. Now, the NRAs are being against gun locks. Now, what they do, if they have nothing else to do, Wayne LaPierre, if he has nothing to do this weekend, he ought to go to a child's funeral because he's got blood in his hands.
No, he doesn't. That's
Yes, he
asinine.
does.
It is asinine to
I
make
agree
that
with you, Bob.
statement.
And to
Well,
blanket
it's not-
statement that nobody locks their guns up is
You didn't say
irresponsible.
nobody locks them.
No, I
You
said
a
not
lot of
everybody
people
locks
don't
them
You
up.
said the
That's the
NRA
point.
doesn't support
And the
gun
problem
locks.
is
That's not
even if
true.
there are a lot of responsible gun owners, it only takes a couple. It doesn't. That's the
I want to
problem. So
remind everybody, though, that
90%,
this is an issue
99%.
that's
It's not.
protected by the Constitution. So
But
we can go around
you can
circles
put limits
in it,
on constitutional protections. We
but
do with
don't-
Why
speech. We do with
punish
speech.
the 100 million gun owners in this country for a very tiny few who are in Chicago, in New York City, in LA? Those are the people who are the problem, not the rest
What
of the
makes you
country.
think they're not studying that?
It's
though?
interesting that one of the greatest cities that's having a problem with this issue, though, as Sandra pointed out, as we've all talked about, is the home city of the President of the United
That's
States
why he's
right
so
now.
concerned with it.
Yeah, well, it's also true that most major European cities that don't allow guns, the murder rate is virtually non-existent.
And
That'll tell
violent
you
crime
something.
is double ours.
All right,
No,
we're going to move
come
on.
on.
But we may come back to it next time you come to visit.
I hope so. Anything I
you
can
got a
talk
lot
about
to
the
say.
NRA and dump on them, the happier I am, because I get all kinds of mail. I know you're all going to send it out there. Fine. I still think the NRA sucks, and I've
Wow.
done from the beginning.
Okay, we're going to move on.